All right, students, welcome to your high-speed revision guide for what is, let's be honest, one of the most important chapters in your entire history syllabus, independent India's first 30 years. We are going to get you totally prepped for that exam, so let's just jump right in. Let's kick things off with this incredibly powerful quote from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. What he's doing here is basically handing you the master key to this whole chapter. He's saying, look, we're creating a country with a massive contradiction. In politics, one person, one vote. Total equality. But in real life, huge inequality because of things like caste and poverty. And if a question pops up about the challenges the new nation faced, this quote, it's your secret weapon for a top-scoring answer. And yeah, that contradiction he talked about, it pretty much sets the stage for everything we're about to cover. The whole story of these first 3 decades is about this massive juggling act, trying to build a nation while balancing the dream of political freedom with the harsh reality of social and economic injustice. So, with this giant challenge hanging over everything, how did India even get started on its democratic journey? Well, that brings us to its very first and maybe its biggest test, the general elections of 1952. I mean, just think about this for a second. This wasn't just a small problem. It was a colossal, mind-boggling puzzle. You have a brand new country, you have 170 million people who can vote, but a huge, huge number of them can't read a newspaper, let alone a ballot paper. How on earth do you make that work? The whole world was watching, and a lot of people were pretty sure it was going to be a total disaster. So the first part of the solution was something totally radical for its time: universal adult franchise. You've got to know that term. It just means that every single adult from day one got the right to vote. Didn't matter if you were a man or a woman, rich or poor, what your caste was, none of that mattered. It was a huge leap of faith in the Indian people. Okay, so to crack that illiteracy problem, the Election Commission came up with 3 brilliantly simple ideas. Now listen up, because this is a classic exam question. First up, party symbols. Think a hand, a flower, a pair of bullocks, simple pictures anyone could recognize. Second, separate ballot boxes. Instead of a confusing paper, you just had a row of boxes, each with a party symbol on it. You just drop your vote in the box you want. Simple. And third, indelible ink. A low-tech but genius way to make sure nobody could vote twice. So they pulled it off. The election was a massive success. But the results? Well, they painted a really interesting picture, kicking off a whole era in Indian politics that we now call the Age of Congress. Just look at these numbers from 1952. The Indian National Congress, the party that led the freedom struggle, just swept the board. They won 364 seats. Now, get this, that's over 70% of the seats, but it came from only about 45% of the votes. This is a pattern that would repeat itself for the next few elections. Okay, now this next part is super important. This is one of those distinctions that separates a good answer from a great answer. India did not have one-party rule. That's what you see in places where no other party is even allowed. What we had was something called the Congress system. And here's the difference. Other parties were totally free to exist and compete, but the real genius was that Congress itself was like this giant umbrella with all sorts of different groups and ideas inside it, socialists, conservatives, everyone. So there was actually a lot of competition and democracy within the Congress party itself. So while the Congress system kept things politically stable, a totally different kind of storm was brewing. The actual map of India was being challenged, with people demanding that the states be redrawn based on language. And this wasn't some quiet debate in an office. Oh no, this was a full-on, passionate, and ultimately tragic struggle. The best example is the story of how Andhra was created. The demand for a state for Telugu speakers got so intense that a Gandhian leader, Patti Sriamulu, started a fast to the death. After 58 days, he passed away. His sacrifice led to massive protests, and the government had no choice but to listen. In 1953, Andhra, the first linguistic state, was born. And this map here, it shows you exactly what the problem was. These old provinces from the British era, like the big Madras presidency you see here, were just a mishmash of different languages. The demand was pretty simple. Let's draw new lines on the map that actually match where people speak Tamil, or Telugu, or Malayalam. Okay, pens out, highlighters ready. You have got to remember this year, 1956. Patti Sriamulu's sacrifice basically opened the floodgates for more demands. So the government set up something called the States Reorganization Commission, or SRC. And based on what it recommended, Parliament passed the States Reorganization Act in 1956. This is an absolutely non-negotiable date for your exam. And the result of that game-changing 1956 act? A brand new map of India. It created the 14 states and 6 union territories that, for the most part, were organized around language. All right, let's hit the fast forward button and jump to the 1970s. Because after all this work building up democracy, the whole system was about to face its biggest crisis ever. We're talking about the national emergency. So, to get what happened, you have to picture the scene. The Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, was incredibly powerful. India had just won a major war in 1971, and she had won a landslide election victory using this ridiculously popular slogan, Garibi Hatao, which means remove poverty. It connected with millions of people. But then everything changed, and it changed fast. On June 12, 1975, a bombshell. The Allahabad High Court said her election was invalid. At the exact same time, huge nationwide protests against government corruption, called the JP movement, were getting bigger and bigger. So, facing this massive political crisis from two sides, on the night of June 25, 1975, the government declared a state of national emergency. Okay, this is another one of those 5-star, absolutely critical exam topics. For the next 21 months, Indian democracy was basically put on pause. You have to know the impacts. 1. Fundamental rights, the basic rights of every citizen, were suspended. 2. The press was censored. Newspapers couldn't print what they wanted. 3. Thousands of opposition leaders were just thrown in jail. And 4. This one is huge. The 42nd Amendment was passed. It changed the Constitution to make Parliament more powerful than the courts. Okay, deep breath. We have covered a ton of ground. So let's do a super fast, rapid-fire rundown of the top 10 things you absolutely must have locked in your brain before you walk into that exam. Ready? Let's go. 1. Ambedkar's quote, "It's all about political equality versus social inequality." 2. The biggest challenge in the first election? Illiteracy. 3. The solutions? Symbols, separate boxes, and indelible ink. 4. The big idea was universal adult franchise. 5. Don't forget it was the Congress system, not one-party rule. 6. Poti Sirimalu, the man whose death created the first linguistic state. 7. The magic year is 1956, the States Reorganization Act. 8. Garibi Hatao, Indira Gandhi's winning slogan. 9. The emergency was declared in 1975. And 10. The 42nd Amendment beefed up Parliament's power. Seriously, pause and screenshot this slide. This is your last-minute revision gold. So after all that, the triumphs, the turmoil, the challenges, you have to ask the big question. Was India's democratic experiment a success? Well, just think about this. By 1977, so many other new countries had already fallen into dictatorships or military rule. But India had held regular elections, it had a real opposition, and the army stayed out of politics. It was, when you think about it, a pretty incredible achievement. And that's a fantastic point to end your answer on. Good luck with your exams. You've